I grew up loving music that didn't sound like South Africa, or at least the South Africa that people expected. This was in car rides with my father to work, holiday trips to Durban, 3 hours on the road, Bill Withers, Diana Ross, Jamiroquai, Erykah Badu, setting the mood, holding us together through wholesome sing-alongs. I think it was around the early 2000s. I was small enough to fit in the leg room of the back seat. And I remember this because that's how I slept during those trips, and I slept through all those trips, right? But before I even thought about making music, my taste was being shaped subconsciously in my sleep. This photo was taken 15 years later. I was performing at a festival at Mountvre in the Eastern Cape. My performance was part of their homecoming itinerary as an artist who developed between the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. But in this photo, I want you to look at it. I look bold. I look audacious, almost heroic. Some might say a reincarnation of Marvin Gaye. But minutes before this photo was taken, I was booed. I watched the crowd disperse. Hands were being flung aggressively, shooing me away. You? I thought maybe me and the audience should have swapped places because that choir of boos was incredibly in sync, all right? Now, I got on stage, and the first words that came out of my mouth were in English, just after a Maskandi act who had just killed it. Of course I was gonna get booed. This wasn't the first time I realized that I don't fit, but it happening 4 years into my career, that impact felt visceral. You know, I began to anticipate rejection, but I powered through those boos because one, I'm a professional, and two, I was being paid. But that moment taught me that even belonging here, at home, ekhaya, often comes with conditions. I was different. I was something else, and I guess by default, I was destined for something else. I needed to find an alternative path for myself. And that path became the path less traveled. So in 2019, it had allowed me to leave the country a couple of times for music. In 2019, I landed in Gainesville, Florida on a music residency with 24 other musicians. We flew in, everybody arrived in different times, but within that first hour, people were already making music together. Then one of the artists came up to me and he said, "You're the South African guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I checked out your stuff." I was like, he's like, "Can you make us some jigom?" Some what? Oh, some gom. Just like that, my personal backstory, right out the window. What mattered more was what my country represented, culturally and musically. I mean, I'm South African. Surely I should be able to make some gom or amapiano and maybe rap in isiZulu, even though my mother tongue is in isiXhosa. You know? It is a bit weird, but this is when I began to see South Africa from afar. You know, how much is assumed, how we're perceived, and how little is actually known. So let's actually look at our flag. It made me start think about representation, what represents us when we're here at home and in the rest of the world. Our flags specifically. In a room full of so many musicians from all over the world, we kind of knew things about each other just based on where we come from. So looking at our flag from this distance, bold, recognizable, colorful, from a distance, those preconceived ideas kind of make sense. Because the thing about distance is that it simplifies things, whereas proximity, on the other hand, complicates them, right? So let's look at it for the sake of empathy from this distance. Flag, 6 colors. Red, blue, green, yellow, black, white. The most of any national flag without a seal. That's us. And if you're quiet long enough, you can actually hear it. That's us, right? From this distance, that seems familiar. This is the South Africa that the world recognizes. So let's get a little bit closer. Now, when you're this close, you began to hear these 12 official languages layered over each other. You begin to understand why we're called Rainbow Nation. The vuvuzela will buzz. But when you're this close, you start to see that there's more. There's more. There's more that this place has to offer. So let's get even closer. Now, when you're this close, this is in only ways that living here allows you to be. And when you're this close, this is where edges start to soften, where things get clearer and blurry at the same time. Certainty disappears. Things start to reveal themselves. And when you're standing this close, you begin to see these things that get lost when a country is only ever seen from far away. Right? So let's get even closer, because our flag isn't just 6 colors. It's a gradient. We are what I call a gradient society. We're made up of the in-betweens. We're not a country that lives in the extremes. We live in nuance, in overlap, in contradiction. This is us, a gradient society. So you just have to be this close to really see it, right? So now let's get even closer, but let's get technical. We're going to pull some colors out of this gradient, not to label people, but to notice them, to hear them. Believe it or not, these colors are from the flag. I don't make this thing up, right? Color number 1 represents a community of people who put sugar in umphokoqo. Color number 2 represents a community of people who speak isiPitori as a 13th official language. And then color number 3 represents a community of people who are deeply, deeply invested in South African alternative music. Not as a rebellion, for the most part, but just as another option. Something that doesn't compete with the bigger picture, but it completes it, right? So that color, or at least the first and the third one, that's where you'd find someone like me, you know? Someone looking for something different. So that word alternative, it just means another option. And we as a society need to really own the fact that we have options. It's important because the mainstream no longer has this tight grip on the things that dictate our tastes. We can choose. We can skip. But that word mainstream also describes what most people share. Something that's normal and conventional. And it makes sense. If enough people share an experience, it becomes a truth, right? So it becomes a truth, and then we learn from this as far as what we do with the event that Man spoiled by mentioning. Now, joking, you're good. So it becomes a truth for us as people who are coming together for South African alternative music. So what then happens is you arrive one Wednesday evening to Johannesburg, and you enter to the heart of alternative culture in Braamfontein, where you'll be amongst those who dare to start something, those who dare to be different. And you yourself, if you were brave enough to look for an alternative, you're going to find it in Braamfontein. Now, I might have said I earlier, but I meant we, because in 2022, me and my business partners, Tebogo Musane, Mkhuseli Bandezi, and Alenzo Molefe started something in Rosebank. We started something in Rosebank because we wanted to create the things that we wish existed. But us too couldn't deny the belonging that Braamfontein had to offer. So we moved, and today we are continuing an event that we started, an artist-led event, weekly live music event called Your Weekly Touch-Up. Now, this is the community that we are nurturing. Your Weekly Touch-Up, again, started in Rosebank. We're now entering our third year. This is a community of people who belong in that other color that I showed you. We are now in our third year, as I said, starting with over 130 weeks, over 200 artists platformed. Our curation changes every single week. Here, you'll walk in and meet a rapper with a quirky slice of life story to tell, a self-taught drummer with a groove only he could have held, and a singer who might have preferred a sweet whisper over a belt. It's the home of that broken beat, those warm chords, the synthesizer. It's the home of soul. Your Weekly Touch-Up for us exists to solve for this feeling to be seen, this need to be heard, not just in our AirPods at home as a guilty pleasure, but as a communal celebration of choice. Your Weekly Touch-Ups allows us to feel seen. It allows you to feel hopeful, to feel vindicated, to feel like you have a place to live. It's a place to not get booed. Because within the alternative exists this freedom of experimentation, hybridization, trial and error. You get to try things. And that is the nature of alternative culture. Because what alternative culture does, it's the future in training. Because what then happens is that without alternatives, there is no variation. Without variation, there's no evolution. And without evolution, we become stagnant. We settle. We don't develop further. We become stagnant. And the thing about alternative culture, it challenges the quality of a society. These are these ideas that exist in the margins, you know? And when you're in the margins, you have a very unique perspective. You get to see things and the gaps that nobody else is seeing. That is the nature of being an alternative person, an alternative musicians, these ideas that live in the margins. Because, again, I said it's the future in training, and it still needs a place to exist. And this place is usually in the margins. It's a quiet place, it's calm, and that's often why you need to fight to be heard. But for us, fighting meant not fighting at all. It meant foregoing the convenience of the preferred event days, like a Friday, a Saturday, a Sunday, and choosing a day in the middle of the week to host South African alternative music. So, when my people and I arrive every Wednesday and we say, I love South African alternative music, especially when I'm reminded about something that those boos taught me. There is so much power and impact when voices are in unison. When you show up repeatedly for something, those ideas begin to stabilize. They become a truth. They become normal. And every Wednesday, when we show up, we are showing up to preserve our right to be normal, our right to choose, our right to be different, not to compete with what's dominant. Just to add that variety of voices, of cultures, of genres, and of colors that complete our national flag. Danko.